Coming up on today's edition of Women and Money, the shit we don't talk about, our guest is Amy Cook. She is a financial advisor with Maven Lane Financial Group.
Yeah, Amy, she really understands the unique financial challenges that women face, and she works to really personalize financial plans tailored to every woman's unique goals and dreams, which we love.
Yeah, that is exactly what women want, and what is Purse Strings is here to ensure women have access to terrific resources like Amy.
Yeah, she's got great information on money stories that we're going to talk about today, and I can't wait to dive into them. Money stories is kind of the first place we like to start when women start talking about money, because it really impacts their behaviors around and their feelings, a lot of things around money.
Yes, it is always an interesting discussion to think about where our own personal money behaviors come from. And so I am ready to dive in. So let's do this.
Gloria Steinem once said, "We will never solve the feminization of power until we solve the masculinity of wealth." Barbara Provost and Maggie Nielsen are the team at Purse Strings that will help you navigate the ins and outs of financial independence so that you can be financially fearless. This is Women in Money, the shit we don't talk about.
Welcome, Amy. We are eager to hear from you and all your experience and insights to share with our communities of women. But before we dive in, could you give us a little intro of who you are and what you do?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. This is really fun. My name is Amy Cook. I am a financial advisor. As you said, I have a practice here in the Bay Area, and I work with about 300 households locally and across the nation. So I've been an advisor for 15 years, and I love what I do. I love helping others with their money and their money stories, and also working through my own as I do it. So thanks again for having me.
Yes, we are excited to have you on today, and we're so glad to have you as one of our financial professionals in our Purse Strings network. And we want to dive into this topic of money stories because we know you've recently written a book called Your Money Narrative. And so let's dive into kind of to this unique topic and then learn more about your book as well. And so just to kind of get started, what are money stories if people are kind of hearing this term for the first time? And how is kind of understanding your money story important or beneficial to our lives?
Yeah, so money stories are really or money narratives, kind of partial truths or whatever our truths are that we form and create when we're young, based on our own experiences and experiences that maybe our parents have, that are embedded into us, that we then take into adulthood and sort of form our decisions around these early stories and kind of carry them through.
Yeah, it is interesting how money stories are like woven into our fabric from different places and different experiences that we have over our lives, whether it be family or community or maybe our religion, our culture. And it's so covert, we don't kind of even know it's happening to us, but we can see the impacts once we kind of step back and really unpack why we feel that way or why we do the things we do when it comes to money. So tell us a little bit about societal expectations and gender roles and how they influence the money stories.
Well, we're on a podcast with women, right? So there's going to be, both sides of the coin there with gender differences. But I think as a woman and growing up, with women, specifically our mothers, our grandmothers, they had their own experiences that they brought to the table around money. And so many of us, depending on how we were raised, those things were embedded in us, like don't spend money. And, like my mom didn't work. So she raised 5 kids and she was a stay-at-home mom. And it was kind of like she was on an allowance. So anytime she spent money, she had to get permission. And I remember as a little girl just thinking, gosh, when I grow up, I want to be like my dad. I want to have my own money and I want to call the shots. So it's all going to be different for each one of us.
That's so interesting as it's not the first time I've heard about a woman who, would have an allowance from their husband and kind of have to spend around that for their personal needs and for their family needs. And it is those money stories then you kind of take with you as, somebody else maybe should control the money is the story that you have, or, money brings you power because you kind of do have that power over that other person. It's these things when you really dive in, you don't always see right away. But I think when you start learning and handling money hands on, you start getting some of these messages come to the surface.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because let's face it, money wasn't really discussed. I mean, it was taboo. It is still today to some degree. It's, sex, money, religion. A lot of times those topics are off limits. And talking about money was rude. You never asked people how much money they made or what they paid for things. It just wasn't a societal norm for the most part. And especially when it comes to women, major taboo, right? And we were raised to, when we get married, we're kind of his property, right? We take on his name. And we're kind of under that notion that everything that we do, all of our earnings, we give to our husbands. And as we live and grow in years past, we see how it's gotten women in a lot of trouble financially just because they just didn't know. And they've given their power over to so many other people. And how often do people really step back and unpack their own money stories? Do you do that with your clients, Amy?
Yeah, I mean, I thought about it over the years. When I started this book, it wasn't like I sat down with my clients and said, let's talk about your money narrative. I think what happened is as I became more aware of my own narratives and looking at, hey, why do I feel that way? Why does that evoke fear? Why does that evoke shame? Why does this decision get me worked up, and started connecting it to, grandma said, don't spend your husband's money, or, be frugal here, and a penny saved is a penny earned. And, all these things that we get into our heads, and you shouldn't spend money, or you're being greedy if you buy something that you don't actually need, or not reuse that piece of tinfoil, because it's almost new, and throwing it in the trash and going, oh my gosh, should I take that out? It's just all those little things. And once you become aware of those, you can share those stories. So I think what happened was, as I became aware of different things that formed decisions and outcomes of my own life, I was able to share those stories with my clients. And then it kind of opens up the gate to, a dialogue, to be like, what's this really about? Like, why are we really afraid of that? Or, what's getting in the way?
I love that even as a financial professional and a successful woman in business, you are still like, I have my own money stories that I've worked through, some I'm still working through, some that I found are true, and you want to stick with. So it's just interesting that, it doesn't, just because you know about money, it doesn't mean they all disappear or something like that. Like, there are all these money stories that every single one of us kind of have to process. And so, women face so many unique financial challenges. How is this kind of reflected in their money stories?
Well, I think, to your point earlier, it's like, we've been conditioned a certain way, right? So, and we don't even realize it. This whole asking for permission and, various things that were embedded in us. And so I think that women tend to be more fearful around money decisions. Because if you think about it, we could break it down in a million different ways, but if we're always waiting for someone to say something's okay, then in our own internal selves, when we go to make a decision, there's going to be a pause, because if there's no one around to say, go ahead, it's okay, you can move forward, you can make that decision, then it creates this big, hesitancy and uncertainty around money too.
Yeah. And sometimes just not doing anything hurts women too. Like, they're not sure what to do, so they do nothing. They don't seek out financial experts, or they put their money in a bank account, not really quite sure if it's earning anything, but they know bank equals safety. I'll put it there. knowing that that's not really investing for them, growing for them, working for them. So they hesitate and don't do enough.
Right? At least they're not losing it. So yeah, it's that, kind of squirreling it away and, being prudent and frugal.
Yeah. So tell us how women can break free from some of these, money narratives that they keep telling themselves and, step into some financial independence and financial abundance.
So I really think that what we're doing right now is the first step in doing that. I mean, we have to talk about it because as you talk about your stories and I may talk about my stories, it can trigger other stories to go, wow, I never really thought about that. I had a similar experience, or I know someone who had a similar experience. And then we can kind of look at it and go, that's silly. That makes no sense, right? And start to sort of chip away and make some changes. And I think that that's the big part about this whole money story, money narrative is it's not like you read a book or write a list and then all of a sudden it all changes. I mean, it's such a process because you think about decades and generations, because it's not just embedded in us, it's embedded in our mothers and our grandmothers.
Right.
And women for, hundreds of years, really, and it just kind of keeps going. So to really break that down and start to change it, I mean, it's a process. I mean, I'll have recurring narratives where I'll go, oh, that's funny that you still had that initial reaction to that decision or that thought. And you just kind of have to little by little sort of whittle away at it. And then all of a sudden things start to shift.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think what what I'm hearing is you have to be, first of all, conscious that we all have our own money story, right? I think it's, for me, really, services in my relationship with my husband. I come from a large family, 13 children. So money equals scarcity, right? Because there was barely enough to go around. We had what we needed, the fundamentals, but we didn't have anything extra, really. And so my parents did some very frugal shopping and things like that in order to spread out the food and everything else that goes with raising a large family. Now, my husband comes from a little bit more of an affluent family. And so when we go shopping, it's so interesting. Like I'll head to, the stores that are a lower price point and he'll be like, let's just go get what we need at the other store. And I'm like, why? Why would we do that? Why don't we go where we can buy the same thing and it's not as expensive instead of just going to one store that, you're just paying more money for? And it's just our money narrative, right? Like he never had to think about that. And I always had to think about that. So we kind of can laugh and chuckle about it because we understand that about each other, but it's very apparent in our relationship.
That's an interesting one, and I'm glad you shared an example, as I think examples help our listeners really understand their money stories. And so, Amy, I'll give you a minute to think if you want to share a money story that you're either breaking or broke recently. I know one that always hit me one time was I was listening to somebody else's podcast, and it was kind of like, only the elite or something like that have this amount of money and this amount of a success. But then it was kind of like, but why not you? There's nothing different about them. They're very just average people who worked hard and, led their passion and were able to achieve that. And so sometimes I'm like, you're right. Why not me? It can be me, just because there's nothing special about a certain person that they were gifted all these things and they could have all that money and success. But it's like all of us could be that way. And so that's one that kind of I like to think about and kind of work through of like, but why not me? There's no reason it couldn't be me. And so that's one that I always like to kind of think about and work through. But Amy, I would love to hear one that either you've been working through or worked through, that's really changed the game for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. I mean, there is no difference. It's just simply a block that we create based on what we've been through. So, I mean, when I was a little girl, I mean, my parents, they lost their house when I was 7. And I saw all of this going on, and there was just this total scarcity and fear and stress. And I saw my dad stressed, and it just as a little girl, it was so scary. but it really wasn't about the money per se. It was just heartbreaking to see all of those emotions like that. So I had this embedded fear of ending up under a bridge, with nothing. And so it was like, well, if we work harder, we make more money. If we had more money, this wouldn't have happened. And of course, that's true. There's a lot of other things that go into it. And as a little kid, you don't really have the ability to process all of that and piece it all together. So you just form this really black and white opinion, like, I need to have lots of money so that I don't end up. And we didn't end up under the bridge, although we did lose our house. We did hop around before we, rented a house after that and had some more stability. But it was a big, big deal, and I carried it and kept carrying it. And I kept, so I would work, and it was like I didn't want to take any downtime. And I worked around the clock. Well, I could be doing this because that would generate more money. And then I don't end up under the bridge, right? And then, as I kept growing, in my career, and I'm like, that's really funny, because it wasn't like I would wake up and go, oh, you're going to be under a bridge. But that fear was there. And so it drove me, and it drove my decisions, and it drove kind of my quality of life and my health. Because I would just go, running myself ragged and really not knowing why there was that level of urgency. But I just kept carrying that story. And they're not all stories. That one, and it drove, and so sometimes those stories can help too, because I was very motivated, that's and there's parts to that are good, and that served me really well for a number of years, until it was like not serving me as well anymore.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a point where as a professional, where you are, now in your career and all the knowledge you have, like if the stocks plummet, if everything plummets, how much it would be to keep a house and not be under the bridge, like you kind of know that's out of the equation now. There is always something that you can do that would keep a roof over your head. But sometimes we are still fighting that race, even though we know no matter what happens, we'll never be there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Purse Strings offers an available for hire network of vetted professionals who specialize in serving women. When you have a life event that has suddenly made money a priority, you can now move forward with a whole new confidence that you're getting advice and services from savvy professionals who are uniquely equipped to serve your needs. Go to pursestrings.co and use our directory of handpicked financial professionals when you're ready to plan for retirement, navigate divorce, buy your next home, fire up your new business, and more. Go to pursestrings.co or check the link in the show notes. Now you can be financially fearless.
Yeah. Well, that's a scary place to be, Amy. I can see where you would carry that with you along the way. But I love that you said that not every money story is a bad money story. Do you have an example of a good positive money story that people have, or that you've heard of, or that you have?
Yeah. I mean, I think I had a lot of positive money stories too. I mean, and that's the thing about once you start diving into these money stories, and then you see that a different situation gets you excited, then you can go, oh, wait, that could be this money story that was created from X, Y, or Z. I mean, I think of, when I was a little girl, or in high school, economics class was my favorite. Well, economics and typing class, which are, my two favorite classes. But we had this, back then, the stock market, you had to check it in the newspaper every day, right? It wasn't online and it wasn't dynamic, but we had this exercise to pick stocks and watch them and monitor them. Well, my dad offered to match my money, because I even then was babysitting every day and doing all these little things, and buy stocks. So he matched dollar for dollar to buy shares of Kmart. And that was my big first endeavor, into the stock market. And I was like, wow, my money is doubling, overnight here. And then we would get together, check the paper, see how it did that day. And I say, like, that story is a really good way to look at a 401k match, just as an aside, because it's just like, put it in, it immediately grows. Well, I wanted to put all my money in. And he was like, he didn't have that much money. So he was like, okay, whoa, we got to put some caps on this or whatever. Cause I'm like, I double, here's all my money, all my baby money. It was a great money story. And it taught me, so many valuable lessons, and I had skin in the game. So it was like when I was showing up for my economics class, I'm like, I own, a few shares here. And it embedded this really this comfort level around that then made it very easy for me to go and invest in a mutual fund or put money aside because I had done that at a young age and I felt really comfortable around it.
Yeah. And what I love about how empowering that money story is we're trying to get women to invest more, right? The number one regret of women is that they don't invest or they haven't invested sooner because of lots of different reasons. But your money story really encourages, the kind of empowerment that you felt that you were learning and investing and getting money from your dad. So that's fabulous. I love it.
I know, we kind of talked about how these money stories come from generations from your grandma and your mom and things you learned as a kid. And so how can we use our money stories to kind of inspire and empower that next generation to be financially savvy and independent, and really financially fearless?
Well, that's the golden question, right? I mean, and I think that as women, we have to be those of us that are willing to talk or that are aware, that have the awareness to talk about these things need to do it, because not every young woman or little girl has that, because this stuff is still going, we need to talk and we need to transparently share like, hey, this happened. This doesn't make sense, and here's how we can take charge of our own decisions financially and otherwise, right? And we don't need to look around the room. If we feel, confident in what we're doing and it's a good decision, we need to charge forward. And I think that we need to show that, and we need to show that to the younger generation so that they can too. And hopefully, in another 50 years, this will not even be a conversation, because it'll be like, wait, what was that 50 years ago? I mean, I hope so.
I know. So tell us a little bit about your book, The Money Narrative, and how you got these stories, and what you've learned from it.
Yeah. So really the book, what I've learned over the years working with so many clients and thousands of conversations is that most people really don't want to go into the weeds and hear all of the financial technical terms and dive into an Excel spreadsheet for 2 hours. They want a good understanding of what they're doing. Mm-hmm. They want to know what they're doing, and they want to know that they're doing, the right things, or they're moving in the right direction. And so to me, to relate to another story can really help you through a dilemma. So if we're talking about Joe and Mary, who, have a kid going into college or just starting a family, and then we go, wait, that's what I've got going on, then it makes it very relatable. So I found that stories have helped in building my business. They help me, and they're enjoyable, and it's a great way to learn about money. So the book is really a compilation of a bunch of different stories, and they're just regular people with, it could be dilemmas or just life, just regular life events and working through those. And I love the format, actually, because it's a little bit different, and it's not really telling you. There are steps in there as far as things to consider, but I'm kind of moving away from the whole latte factor. And I've never sat down with clients and told them exactly what they need to cut out. It's more, here's what needs to go into these buckets, and it's up to you to decide how we're going to come up with that, right? Because I may have non-negotiables that are different than your non-negotiables. Like, I got to get this hair done. So if it comes down to, a number of near essentials, I'm going to be like, I got to get the hair done. I'll eat top ramen for a month or whatever to do that. So it really, everybody's different. Everyone has different priorities. And I think that that's okay. And there's nothing to feel guilty about or ashamed about, if that's what you want, as long as the other things are happening, do it.
Yeah, it's so interesting, not to dive too much into budgets, but what people it's most important to them, and you really can't tell somebody, it's this or that. I mean, I was just thinking the other day, like, ooh, if I cut my nails, I could get a massage every month. And to other people, it might be like, well, that's a one-time hour thing. It's not great. Where I'm like, where your nails you have all month, and I'm like, ooh, but it's great for the whole month, your massage. And so it's like, what are you willing to give and take to make it all fit in your budget if you don't have enough money for the massage and for the nails every month or whatever it may be?
Yeah, we all have choices to make, and our priorities are different. And I love that, Amy, because too often women get, stop drinking the coffee or quit, getting the nails done or whatever. And, I don't think anyone has a right to say that to people. Everybody can make their own choices and live by their own consequences. I mean, giving them the information and knowing what those consequences are and how you're going to live by them, that's your own choice. So when people come at women and tell them, you spend too much, you this, you that, we're not having it anymore. Women work really, really hard. And yes, we need to be financially conscious of our money, no doubt about it. If we're not, it gets us in trouble. But, make your own choices on how you want to best allocate your expenses.
We're perpetuating the problem, right? By continuing to say this is in the okay, this is in the not okay.
Right.
I feel like by just bundling it, we have to get this much, put over here. It opens things up for choice. Right. And I think that that's part of what, to your earlier question with the next generations, it's empowerment. There's absolutely no reason why we can't control our financial future and our financial current situation. The choices we make, change them confidently.
Yeah. And that's it's a whole story in itself, is just having that confidence and having that power and knowing that you have that ability to choose what you want. I feel like it's its own story in itself that's good to carry and to pass on.
Yeah. And we always say, be financially fearless and build a financial future full of choices. So people don't say, I don't have a choice. I have to do this or that. Well, really take a hard, good look, work with people like Amy. We have tons of financial professionals at Purse Strings that can really help you take a good hard look at your expenses, your budgets, your income, and really let you make those choices about what you want to be doing in your life and set up a program and a plan that suits your needs, who you are, what you want, how you want to live your life, so that you live a life full of choices, for sure.
I think this has been such a great conversation today. And so, Amy, I want to make sure we get the details out. Is the book out? Is it just about to be out? Where are we at? And where can we get the book?
Yeah, so the book is out. It came out on January 2nd. It's available on Amazon and any other bookstore. I mean, if you do a Google search for Your Money Narrative, it comes up all kinds of places. There's also Kindle and then an Audible version too.
Awesome. And we'll make sure that link is in the show notes as well. So you could just go ahead and grab that book.
Yeah.
And then we wanted to, start a little question at the end of 2024 or the end of the podcast for our 2024 episodes. And so, Amy, what is one piece of financial advice you would give to women who want to be financially fearless in 2024?
I would say go after it. We're not getting any younger, and we're not on a 12-month time frame, right? We're just growing, and we're never going to be done growing. And just start. I mean, there's nothing to be afraid of.
I love that. Well, thank you, Amy, for coming on today. All of Amy's contact information will be in the show notes. She's one of our Purse Strings approved professionals, so you could check her out on our site, pursestrings.co. But make sure to grab yourself a copy of Your Money Narrative. Buy it from a women's small business if you can, and just get started. Like Amy said, go for it. And if that's calling a Purse Strings approved professional, let's make that happen, as they are willing, ready, and able to serve you. So thank you everyone for tuning in and listening today. If you would, send it to a friend so we can keep this conversation going, and give us 5 stars. That helps us grow as well. And we will be back in 2 weeks with another episode on how to be financially fearless. So let's keep talking about the shit, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you, guys.
Bye now.
Bye.
Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, investment, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action.